Welcome to Dramatic Pause, a Rose Theater podcast. On today's episode, we'll be talking with Zach about the world of costuming here at the Rose. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dramatic Pause, a Rose Theater podcast. We are so excited today because Zach is joining us from the costume shop, and we're going to get to talk all about what it's like to create costumes for shows at the Rose. So welcome, Zach. Do you want to just tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, sure. Hi, my name is Zach Kloppenborg. I am the costume shop foreman here at the Rose. I am also one of the resident costume designers and the resident hair and makeup designer for all of our shows.
Awesome. You wear a lot of hats, it sounds like.
I sure do. And I've been working here for about a year and a half.
Yeah, you started last season, right? And then now you've rolled into this new one?
Yep.
That's awesome. And this year has been a little different as far as front of house and on stage, but I'm guessing that as far as making costumes and getting people in makeup, other than maybe the masks, it's been more normal than not?
Well, kind of. We've been able to kind of slow down because we don't have as many projects going at once. In a typical season where we've got 12 shows going on, there's always at least 2 projects going on at the same time, if not 3 or 4, between Metro tours and first stages shows up in the Hitchcock and the main stage show and other random projects that pop up and pulling stuff from rental for people. But so this year it's just been a lot more slow, and we've been able to really focus on these shows that we're putting on.
Sure, absolutely. No, that makes total sense that you've had a little breathing room because of our schedule this year. So what can you tell me just a little bit about what it's like, when we start talking about shows, when we start, looking at scripts, how do you guys go from having a script to having a costume? What is that process like?
Yeah. So it starts with reading, just lots and lots and lots of reading. We read that script, at least 10 times, if not more. And I think one of my favorite descriptions of what a designer does is that they're a detective. And so they'll look through a script and find clues. Like in the case of a costume designer, you'll look for, like, if a character mentions that another character is wearing red, or favorite colors, or moods, or professions, all these little things that help tell you, like, what does this person look like? And then from there, you make sketches, you take notes, and you just kind of compile all of your first impressions, which gets us into design meetings. So once all of the designers have designed or have read through the script and done their detective work, we bring that all together with the director, and the director will tell us, okay, here's their vision for the show. Here's what they're kind of seeing in their head and the kind of requests that they have specifically for each designer. And then you kind of get to bring all your detective work to the table and kind of make it fit in with their vision, or you end up scrapping a lot of things sometimes, which is fine. That's all just part of the game. And then the design process is over the course of several weeks and months. We kind of refine what we have from our detective work. We add to it. We bring in research from other sources like history or art, and just all kinds of anywhere you can find inspiration. You bring that all together, and by the end of the design process, you have a full picture of the show. And for the designer, that means we have renderings, which are pictures that we draw of what the final costumes will look like. I do my renderings in watercolor when I'm designing. Sherry does hers in fashion markers. And I know a lot of designers have used things like collage, like they'll cut pictures out of magazines or off the internet. Some people don't do any kind of visual rendering at all. They'll just provide, like, lists or really thorough descriptions in writing. You can also go through, if you know kind of what fabrics you're going to be using, you can create color boards using swatches of fabric. I love the rendering process. I just kind of finished my renderings for our next show, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. And it's the part of the process that gets really exciting before it becomes a lot of hard work.
Yes, where you get to just envision it before you're making it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then it's really fun to see. It's like the vision all come together, and you don't really get to see everything from there kind of blows up and turns into a bunch of pieces before it comes back together at the end. So speaking of which, after you get those renderings done and the director has signed off on them and said, yes, this is great, this is the direction we're going, it all comes down to the costume shop. Now here, my boss, Sherry, is the costume shop manager, and a shop manager's job is to kind of break down the designs into what the work is. So these are the pieces that we're going to buy. These are the pieces that we're going to pull from our stock. These are the pieces that we're going to completely build from scratch. And then you make a list, you break out who's doing what piece of work, and you get to it. And you do all those things. We go down, we have a huge stock where we've saved up costumes from all of our previous shows that we've done here at the Rose, and we can pull pieces, or we can pull full costumes, or we can take things and we can alter them. We can also go buy things. We go to thrift stores, we buy things new from stores, off the internet. And then of course we go to the fabric store or order fabric online, and we can build new clothing, new costumes completely from scratch. And that process usually starts about the same time that the actors start rehearsing. And it takes us about that long, because we have from the time the actors start rehearsing to when they get into tech week, which is that last week before the show opens, to have the costumes completed and ready to wear.
For sure. And so that's typically 2.5, 3 weeks?
Yeah. And like I said, about this season, one of the particularly nice things is we're a good 2 weeks out from starting rehearsals for Pigeon, and I'm already building.
Sure.
Which it's great.
Yeah. So when it comes to like, I think the Rose being a children's theater, it's kind of interesting. We put a lot of animals on stage. And so it's maybe a little different than just building a dress or making pants sometimes. There's a picture of you on Facebook very recently making giant butterfly wings, so
Oh, yeah.
Projects like that, are those more exciting, more difficult? What, how do you guys kind of
Both.
attack those?
It's both. It's more exciting and definitely more difficult. Because most of the training that you get as when you're going into costume is kind of fashion based. So it is more about like how's clothing constructed? How do you make a shirt or a dress or pants? Which is all very useful skills, and it's all very applicable to making giant animal things, because it all breaks down to just geometry, really, understanding how 2D fabric becomes three-dimensional shapes. But in the case of something giant like those butterfly wings, or for Pigeon right now, I'm building, in the middle of building, some giant foam duckling heads that are like these perfect spheres, and you work with materials that you don't usually for normal clothing. Like we use a 1/2-inch foam for a lot of our like bigger structural animal pieces. And so it's a lot of wrestling with the sewing machine. It takes a lot of upper body strength. My arms are so sore. Yesterday I was wrestling with this piece of foam for all day. It's brutal, but it's really rewarding when and if you get it to work. But sometimes
Sure.
you don't. And that's when you find something shiny or fluffy to like glue on top of it and just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely interesting. The Rose is really cool in the fact that lots of times the staff gets to get together and talk about a show after everyone's kind of gotten their designs together, but before the show has started. And we haven't been able to do that this year, just to keep ourselves safe and stay a little more socially distanced. But I remember lots of costume design talks where Sherry was, she's talking about very unique items like this foam, or kind of working these things out. For one in particular, Dragons Love Tacos, she came
Oh my
down
gosh.
with a waste paper basket and
Yeah.
was like, this is going to be a hat. So just thinking about the way that you guys have to problem solve because we create such interesting people and animals on stage, I think is just so cool.
It's certainly a really good application of what we know from costuming. It's just kind of, you have to kind of know everything at least a little bit to
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
attack it.
Just having
It's
this different
sewing.
kind of brain to look at things and say, I think that'll work for me in the different
Yes.
way.
Yes, very much so.
Well, that's awesome. So you're the designer for Pigeon then?
Yes.
That's super exciting. So that'll be a really great. We'll get this, you know, everyone who's listening will get to listen to this podcast and then hopefully come and see your work right afterwards. So that's really cool. Is there a costume in particular that you're most excited for with that show?
Um, I mean, these duckling heads are, if I can pull them off, they're going to be pretty spectacular. But there's one character in particular that I'm really excited for, and it really has nothing to do with my design. It's just the script. Um, the character is Little Old Lady, and she is just this little old lady, and she's riding the bus to go feed breadcrumbs to birds. And even though she's not there at her park bench to throw breadcrumbs to the birds, the whole show she is just throwing breadcrumbs at people, and it's hilarious. And so I made her just big and colorful. She's got a big leopard print coat with lavender fur collar and cuffs, and like she's a hoot.
I love
I'm
it.
really
That's awesome. That's so exciting. Yeah. So, so you guys will get to go through that whole process now for that show. And so after you get your actors then and you've gotten your costumes, do you guys how many fittings do you get to have with actors before it's really time?
hmm. So we try to keep it as kind of as few fittings as we can, just to save the actors the trip out to the theater and to save us time so that we can have more time to work than spending time fitting that stuff on actors. So
Sure.
we try to keep it around two. Um, if it's an actor we've never worked with before, they'll come in initially for measurements, which because you have to have measurements so that things fit bodies correctly. Um, and we've also new we started doing this season is I've started doing makeup and hair consultations, which is ultimately to make my job easier and just to learn a little bit about how proficient our actors are with makeup and what their hair is like to work with and whether they apply heat to it and what their nighttime routines are. And it gives me a fuller picture of what our actors are comfortable doing, which is not the question you asked at all. Okay.
No, but that's
So yeah,
wonderful.
but after the measurements and consultations, we uh, try to do usually maybe two fittings. One fitting will be more about making sure everything fits right and is patterned correctly to their bodies. If you've got a big sculptural foam piece, kind of mounting it onto their head, however that needs to be strapped on. And then the second fitting is more about putting things on and making sure they all look good and are comfortable and that you're really achieving that final look.
Sure. Okay, gotcha. And then do you guys attend Tech Week to see how it looks with everything?
We sure do. So after there's the initial tech rehearsal, which for us is usually on a Saturday, and that's all about lights and sound and getting the actors standing in the right places on stage. And then the next rehearsal, which is usually on a Monday, is first dress, and that is a rehearsal entirely about costumes and about the actors figuring out where, if they have to change from one character to another, where backstage they're going to do that change and how quickly they need to do it and practicing that and just getting that all worked into their bodies. The second rehearsal or the second dress rehearsal is we add makeup and hair on top of that. And then third dress is usually just a repeat. It's just a repetition to kind of get that system and get that repetition into the actors' bodies. And after that, it's preview and opening.
And
And
it's
of
go,
course,
go,
each of those
go.
rehearsals gives us an opportunity to adjust costumes as we see mistakes or things missing. And yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. A little bit of from what I understand, it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's, oh, this isn't quite wearing right, but also sometimes it's, oh, that actor isn't wearing that right.
Yes. Yes.
No,
Which
that's awesome.
you
Oh,
can't blame the actors. It's a lot.
absolutely. Yes. It's a lot of pieces to put together all of a sudden, the
Oh yeah.
lights and everything and all the cues. Definitely, it's a lot for everyone, but that's why, we have such great staff members here to help get everything just right before a show opens. And you mentioned hair and makeup, and so do you just teach the actors what to do, or are you there to do it every show?
So I am not here to do it every show. We're a unique theater in that most theaters don't provide makeup to their actors. Part of a professional actor's kit is their own makeup kit and the ability to apply it themselves.
Sure.
But because we work in Omaha, and Omaha really is a community theater town, we have a lot of actors that come that aren't professionally trained. They're just doing it for the love of the art and because they're good at it, and that's wonderful. But one of the things that's necessitated is a need for us to provide makeup for them. And so if we're providing the makeup, it also gives us a little more control over the final look of the show. So I will write out makeup charts and drawings that kind of will help the actor's guide. I'll share my research. And yeah, I will, to answer the question in the longest way possible. Yeah, I will teach the actors how to do it themselves. So I'm there for those first few dress rehearsal nights to help them apply, but for the most part, the idea is that an actor should be able to apply their own.
For sure. Awesome. And we also have youth cast generally too. And is that something that we teach them as well? Any youth in the audience or in the cast also does it themselves?
Yes. Sometimes for a bigger show like Elf, with youth artists, we'll kind of do a thing where if you've got a large youth chorus and there are multiple youth artists in the show, we'll have our education rep, which is the one person from our education department who's assigned to kind of wrangling the children for the show. We'll kind of assist in kind of making a conveyor belt so that the kids line up and one person does the one person does eyeliner, one person does lipstick, just so it gets them through all quickly.
Sure.
But if you've only got a couple artists in the show, like we do for How to Build an Arc, I'll still do just what I do for the adult actors. I'll write out a chart for them. I'll provide them whatever tools and makeup they need to do the job. And I usually try to keep it pretty simple for youth artists, especially ones that haven't had stage experience before. What's been interesting with COVID and the mask situation is that I haven't had to provide much more makeup. There's not much point in providing like a foundation, which would do like full coverage. So it's mostly been eyeliner, filling in eyebrows,
Sure.
a little bit of eyeshadow. I've been getting a little adventurous and doing some research and some different eyeshadow applications, which has been fun and something new to kind of focus on. But so for the youth actors, it's been pretty much eyeliner, and that's it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and it's convenient too, especially I suppose for this show because both of our youth artists play humans. So,
Yes.
so that's probably very helpful. Well, awesome. It sounds like a really cool process, a really cool job. And if anyone's out there listening and is, thinking like, man, this sounds so cool. How do I get this job? How do I become this person? What would you say? Like, how do you start taking steps towards trying to become someone who works in costumes?
Sure. I think you've got to have some interest in clothing, but also my way into it wasn't really through clothing. I was an amateur cartoonist all through high school and elementary school. Like I did my own little comic books. And so really for me, costume design is less about clothing and it's more about character design. So if that's something that interests you, I think it's important to think of it less as you have to be interested in fashion and clothing and more you have to be interested in different aspects of art and characters and storytelling. So that's kind of, you got to find your way in first. And usually it's going to be something visual. But then skills that are going to help you to start really understanding now. I mentioned geometry earlier. Like that's the really important math that's going to help you so much if you get into costumes. Even if you don't do crazy sculptural animals like we do here, regular clothing takes a lot of sort of mathematical modeling brain.
Sure.
And then even, I mean, on top of that, just basic, the ability to add and subtract fractions is absolutely, we use that every single day with measurements. But then ultimately, so those are just some things to kind of help you get into it, interested. Those are the things to kind of start you off. College is going to be your best tool in getting you towards this career. Go to a good theater school with a great costuming program and really start getting some experience under your belt. Experience is invaluable.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Getting the chance to actually start working on something, I think, is probably, yes, the best way. But no, that's super great, Zach. Thank you so much for your time. And we are so excited to be able to see some of your costumes come to life shortly here with Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus.
I'm excited too.
Well, thanks so much for your time. And thanks so much for everyone listening. We look forward to talking to you again on Dramatic Pause in the next few weeks.